Ladies and gentlemen, today we have an extremely interesting personality with us, Laura Beachy. A little about Laura. She's a media specialist whose career has spanned over film, television, publishing, PR, digital brand development. Before founding Beachy Media, she has worked for media houses like Fox, ABC, and Summit Entertainment. Laura Beachy is also an ultra marathoner and a triathlete. Laura, welcome to the show.
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Okay, we're going to start off with getting to know a little about you. So tell us, which part of the United States do you come from?
So I'm originally from a small town outside of Pittsburgh, but I have been living in New York City for 8 years.
Okay. New York has a large Indian American population also. Do you have some Indian friends?
Well, oddly enough, back where I lived in Pittsburgh, I grew up next door to two different Indian families, one Catholic meat eating family and one Hindu vegetarian eating family. So I ate very well growing up. I also, we would play cricket in their yard and baseball in mine. So we had a nice little Indian community back where I grew up. And fondly enough, my next door neighbor from growing up, she moved to my neighborhood in Queens. So I feel like I've had like a nice connection with an Indian community my whole life, which means that I have a nice taste palette and also a nice keen eye for design because of that.
Interesting. And also you got Indians to play baseball, so that's quite an achievement.
That's true, but they got me to play cricket, and I want to say I am not a bad bowler, but I'm a way better baseball pitcher.
Interesting. Okay, I have read about how you and the people in your region, where you come from, were influenced by 9/11. And you've also been a 3-time film festival finalist for a documentary. Tell us a little about that.
Sure. So on 9/11, there were 3 flights that went down in the United States. There was obviously the 2 or 4 flights. There was 2 that hit the World Trade Center in New York City. There was 1 that hit the Pentagon in DC. And then there was 1 where folks on the flight actually had a scuffle with the terrorist and helped to bring down the plane or brought down the plane accidentally in a field in Pennsylvania. And that field in Pennsylvania was basically my backyard. So it was in my town, in my backyard. And we were very much a middle of nowhere town. There wasn't a lot of news that happened. It was a bit quiet, to say the least. So 9/11 really thrust that area into the national spotlight from a media attention perspective, and also just for an understanding of like an entire different area of life, because you're seeing on the news a lot all about New York and DC, which are major cities, but now you're seeing that this event also impacted like small communities and how each of these people collectively chose to memorialize that event in their own ways. So about a decade later, I went back to my hometown to do a film on how 9/11 affected that area specifically. But I also think that that event helped to shape me to want to get involved in media. In general, when all of the major news outlets descended upon my town, I was just such an ambitious little kid news junkie. So I begged my parents to take me to where they were doing interviews at this local diner. And by the time they came and found me, I was holding the camera and talking to the interviewer. So then the first anniversary came up and they did a huge memorial, and all the news crews came back in. That same national reporter, called my mom and dad up and asked if I would be allowed to come on the news truck. And I think that's when I really started to get impassioned about being involved in media. That sealed my fate a bit. And then as time went on, I understood the importance of the effect that international event had on our community for better and explored those narratives and followed three people specifically and how they chose to personally memorialize this international tragedy on an individual level. And so we were a couple film festival finalist in documentary as like first time director. And we also got distribution through PBS in the United States, which is the public broadcasting channel. So every year in Pennsylvania, our film plays on 9/11. So I get like a phone call sometimes from very happy parents that that they're seeing my film on TV, which is really.
And you directed the movie, or you were?
I directed and executive produced, and then my friend Ryan Bolton helped to edit and also was the camera work.
Interesting. In fact, I didn't know of this element of you when we in the time that we met.
It almost feels like a different life, to be honest. It was how long ago would I have made that? 8 years. So it really does feel like a different life.
But did you not follow it up with any more production or direction?
We followed up with some individual interviews that have been written, but the three individuals that we followed, one unfortunately has passed away from cancer. One moved out of the area, and the other one he's very sensitive to the situation happened. So we followed like three storylines. It was a Catholic priest, an excommunicated Catholic priest who chose to like build a chapel, and it was the first memorial to honor these folks that passed away in this flight. He's the one that passed away. Then there was an individual who's one of the first responders on the scene, realized there was nothing he could do and had like a life mission then to try to like raise money for victims' families or first responders' families. It was this big motorcycle organization that every year would go to each of the three sites and raise money for first responders and to send their kids to college. And then the third individual was this man who was one of the only eyewitnesses to the flights going down. And this is a person that very much grew up in the country, had never left really our area, had never seen a plane up close, had never been on a plane, certainly. So I think that watching it go down and just the horror of that, that must have been, he tattooed his entire body with images of that day. So the victims' names, images from the site. And I think that was his way to cope, but also, you know, he explores like, was that like an appropriate way to cope? Was that something that helped him? And you follow that narrative. So I'm still very close with him in that we send each other Christmas cards every year. And when I go home, I try to see him and grab coffee with him. But you want to be respectful to the people that you have, you know, shined a light on their story and not overwhelm them as years go by. So it very much is a piece of its time.
You've been able to converge a lot of your personal interests in your professional engagements. Like you've been fond of media, like you said, got influenced with the 9/11 incident, and then you've been a sportsman, you've been a runner since childhood, I think. Mm-hmm. And the work that you do is a lot about working with sports companies and of course helping them with marketing and PR. So tell us a little about this.
So I've always tried to live by the idea that you should do what you know. So you are going to excel in an area if you like are passionate about it already. And so I have been a runner and a triathlete for so long. I've run competitively for 17 years, high school cross country and track starting. And then I've been a marathon runner. I've run ultra marathons. And then in college, I was a collegiate triathlete. And so sports has always been like just a very pivotal part of my life, in endurance sports specifically. So after I graduated college, I went on to work for a fitness tech startup that was very triathlon focused. And from there, I jumped to Rodale Publishing, which owns Runner's World Bicycling, Men's Health and Women's Health, and a bunch of other pretty big name fitness publications. So I was the publicist and digital brand developer for Runner's World and Bicycling magazine. And from there, I just basically realized that I felt that I had the skill set necessary to kind of venture out on my own and then work with the brands themselves. Gone are the days where these media houses need to just like where a brand needs to go to a media house to get attention. With the age of social media and how marketing has really become just an insidious part of all our existence, like these brands are their own media houses. You see that with the content they produce and what you're consuming on a day-to-day basis on social.
That's true. Absolutely.
So I went from pivoting that skill set within the magazine world to actually doing it for brands first, as well as for athletes. So I founded Beachy Media about 5.5, almost 6 years ago, which is wild to say. And we specialized at first in endurance sports, so running, swimming, cycling, triathlon, and also really trying to bring a female approach to that. When I first got started, and it's crazy that in 6 years you can see such a shift, and it's great to see. But when I first started, it was kind of just like, oh, slap something pink on it, and then it's for women. And that's like not how you market to women, especially because we are very serious athletes that take our sport seriously, train just as hard. So how do you market to us seriously where it feels like authentic and not forced? So that was where we really focused. And as we grew and expanded, I brought on a business partner, Rachel Cochran, who's a delight. She's also a triathlete and runner. And we expanded a little bit. We work a little bit in the nonprofit sector, a bit in the energy sector, and a bit in the alcohol, food, and wine as well. But our end-all be-all is always going to be endurance sports.
Okay. You've also done an assignment with Catherine Switzer.
Yeah, so we're her publicists. So we're aligned with her until she doesn't want us anymore. She is
right. But I would like you to take a moment and tell our viewers a little about Catherine Switzer and why she's so significant in the women's sport scene.
Absolutely. So Catherine Switzer changed women's sports, not just in the United States, but internationally. And not just in the past, but also very much in the present. Catherine was the first woman to run the Boston Marathon with a registered bib number. When she was in high school in in college at Syracuse, my alma mater, in the late 60s, she had been running for a really long time, running with the boys cross country team. And she decided that she was going to run the Boston Marathon. And her coach helped to train her. That she signed up, and she signed as KV Switzer, so they didn't really question when she registered if she was a female. And at that time, women were not only were women like not allowed to run the Boston Marathon, people kind of propagated the idea that their uteruses would fall out, like they couldn't run that far, they couldn't do sports of that caliber. And so she got on the start line and started the Boston Marathon. And she said a lot of the men around her were actually super supportive. They're like, yeah, it's a woman, it's a woman. And at one point, the race director was in the media car with all the journalists that were taking photos. And they're like, oh my God, there's a girl. And this guy, Jock Semple, the race director, got so angry that he jumped off of the media car, ran over and tried to pull her off the race. At the time, her big linebacker football player boyfriend basically like hit this guy off into the side. The media captured the entire event by photo because they were right off the media track.
Yeah, that's a photo that's
it's an iconic photo. Yeah. And because the media was there to capture that, I don't think that it would have reached a level of prominence if there wasn't a photographic evidence of the actual start to finish.
So the power of media right there.
Power of media. And she said, she said to herself in that moment, I don't know what I'm going to have to do, but if I have to crawl on my hands and knees to finish this race, I'm going to do it, so to show that women can. And so she did. I mean, she trudged along, she crossed the finish line, and the next day it was on every front page of every major newspaper in the United States and on TV. Wow. And it kind of skyrocketed her from just this average woman that just wanted to run. Well, Catherine has never been average, let's be honest, but just a woman that wanted to run a race to now this feminist icon. So Catherine went on to then win the New York City Marathon a couple of years later and become a pretty decent athlete in her own right. Her time at Boston was just a very average time. Her time in New York was very fast, especially for its era. And then she went on to become a really hard advocate for women in sports. She helped to get the marathon the women's marathon into the Olympics. She was a big advocate for that and helped to make that happen. She then became a sports commentator, as well as an author and a speaker.
She was also a journalist, isn't it?
She was a sports journalist. So she's very much practiced what she's preached, and really with hedging her bets on trying to not just prove that women can do anything a man can, in the sports realm and beyond, but just like advocating for the women's rights movement as a whole. And so she, 50 years later, after her iconic run, ran the Boston Marathon on the 50th anniversary, and they retired her bib number. And so we were her publicity team for that 50th anniversary. So she was in hundreds of media outlets from across the world in multiple different languages. And we also worked on doing press for her foundation, 261 Fearless, which is an organization that tries to support women through running and support women's empowerment through running. So there's clubs across the world at this point, and they're trying to expand in different regions in the Middle East and Africa, where women don't have necessarily that luxury to begin with. So she's a very inspirational individual. It's 261 Fearless because 261 was her bib number at the Boston Marathon 50 some years ago.
Nice. You've worked with niche brands with unique product offerings. Like I came across one. It was like a headlamp that you can cling onto your shoe.
Your Honor. Yeah.
And then some a zero drop shoe, for example. This is a company that you probably are still working with, I suppose. These are products that are not, so to say, mainstream. These are niche products, and ultra marathon or even adventure sport is not, at least for Indians, is not mainstream. So how different is it to market such products in comparison to usual ones?
Sure. That's actually a really great question. So I think, especially when you're marketing a niche into a specific niche, so people that are really impassioned by ultra marathoning, which might seem like a small community, but in the greater context, it's actually like a pretty robust community that invests within the gear and the equipment, because it's really important that they have really good equipment if they're going to be out there for X number of hours on a course. So we love representing products within these niche communities for a couple reasons. The reporters that you go to, you know them by name and you're friends with them because the community is so small. So I may have run races with a lot of them. So in terms of like relationship building, I feel like because I'm an ultra marathon runner, I can bring a level of expertise into that field where I'm not just like trying to push a product. I have actually used the products that I'm pushing.
So you are an influencer in your own right.
Yeah, absolutely. And then combined with that, when you're doing any type of marketing online, on social or digital ad buys, and you're trying to really tailor exactly who you want to reach, these niche communities, the engagement is going to be higher for the ad dollar. So whereas if you have something that, let's say, is just a normal shoe, or maybe it's like a drink, like a Gatorade or Pepsi product, they're just trying to reach so many people in such a wide audience. So the return on ad spend is naturally going to be lower than what it is to reach the exact type of niche market. So we really thrive in trying to target those areas, A, because we know them really well personally, but B, because we have the contacts and also understand the targeting that it takes to make a campaign successful.
I see. Beachy Media specializes in marketing and PR. Like you've done PR for Ms. Twitter. So how do you see this combining both of these techniques and then bringing the brand out there to the market?
Absolutely. So gone are the days where marketing and PR are in silos, especially with the advent of social media and how integral that's become part of a communication strategy as a whole. You need to make sure that the strategy is working in line with each other and also optimizing each other. So there's three types of basically buckets of media. There's paid, earned, and owned. Paid media is anything that you're putting ad dollars in. So whether that be a social media ad buy or a radio buy or TV buy. Earned media is anything that you're doing PR for. So you're reaching out to the media to try to get attention. You're reaching out to an influencer to try to get them to rep your brand. And then owned media is anything that you personally can affect directly. So your organic social media channels, your email marketing, your website design. However, a lot of times those are not in silos either. They bleed together. For example, when you're doing an influencer marketing strategy, while that is earned media, you might have to pay the influencer. So it's also becomes paid, but you also want to promote that content that they're creating on your social channels. So that is your owned media. So we very much as a company have a thorough understanding that this is a 360-degree process. So not only do we specialize in PR and marketing, we specialize in optimizing the strategies together. Another example would be is, for example, let's say someone got a media hit in the New York Times where their product was reviewed. Well, that can also be used for a paid social media ad buy to give it authenticity and credence. So that goes into the paid side, but on the owned side, you're promoting that hit on your social channels as well as putting it on your website with your media that's owned. So it's how can you optimize each of these individual channels to work together for the overall strategy?
Like you very rightly pointed in the beginning of our conversation that the dynamics have really changed with social media coming in, and the traditional modes of communication like the print media kind of got diluted with social media coming in the mainstream. So I think the strategy also kind of has changed, and it's very a lot of things are now need to be in sync than they probably would be in the past.
Yeah, and I think now more than ever for agencies like us or people that represent athletes in general or product in general, you just have to be really in tune with what the trends are with the media at the time. So as things shift, like if Facebook changes an algorithm, that honestly changes like pivotally how you do approach your strategy. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not thrilled with like how reliant we are off of these big tech companies for promotional opportunities. But, you know, or if Amazon shifts its strategy in the United States of how it does direct to sale, that intimately impacts how we do our communication strategy. So it's really important as an agency that you're not just coasting all the time, but that you're really absorbing the trends and how things are shifting and how the reaction is to those shifts for your client.
Right. Since you've been a serious runner, and you come from a country which has a reasonable level of participation in sport, what views do you have about participation in sport or running in particular in a country like India, which is not so driven by sport in terms of habits or culture?
That's a great question. So what I love about running is it doesn't necessarily have to be a competitive activity. It can be a lifestyle choice that you're making just to be healthy. So it's movement in general, getting up and moving and walking or just moving the body in general is just so important to overall health. And I think that once you strip the idea of it being like, oh, it's purely competition, purely sport. And for the average layperson who's not going to go out and make the Olympic team or make like a national team, it really is like a way to just keep healthy and also at a relatively low cost when the only barrier of entry are a pair of shoes. So I think a mindset shift in which it is more applicable to like your everyday life and a lifestyle is how it's viewed in America as an activity, which is a luxury. It's a luxury to be able to have the time and the wherewithal to be able to do that. And it's also like a classist luxury in that way too. So I think it's important to like remember who you're talking to and what the end goal is. On the sports side of that, sport is just a really integral part of my life and also in the lives of a lot of Americans. It's something that shows camaraderie. It's something that shows teamwork. And it also something that shows fortitude. I mean, the lessons that I've learned from running have not just been physical, but also knowing that like I can just push a little farther and get over that hump. And whether that be like a hump in life or a hump that I am just struggling with emotionally, I know that because I have gone through hardships literally out on the race course, I can apply that to my like everyday existence. So I think that sport transcends just the baseline of it just being an extracurricular or something that is very flippant, but there's practical applications to your overall life. So I think my comment would be to like shift the mindset in general of what sport actually offers. It not only is just offering an escapist entertainment, it's offering lifestyle pieces as well as camaraderie, as well as team building exercises that are really pivotal to kind of like an overall lifestyle choice and shift.
Right. As a marketeer in a country like India with 1.3 billion people out there, and let's say take an example of running as a sport that you're trying to market to the country, one tends to get overwhelmed or gets a little excited about reaching out to a lot of people because that's the number of people out there. So what advice would you have for a marketing brand or as a marketer yourself? How would you create your own niche with so many people out there? Because, as a business person, you would want to go out there to as many people as possible, sell as many products as possible. But as a marketer, how do you see that, strategize in that space?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So I think business owners in general, they just want to be able to sell as much product to people that are enthusiastic about it. And I think when they enter into a strategy, they're like, well, how can we just cast a wide net and just get everybody? And you're like, well, with that type of approach, you're going to get nobody because you're not focusing. And focus is just so important, especially at the onset when you're building the brand. The goal is to eventually like expand and spread out and spread that network, but focus on exactly the people that you are trying to target. And what I mean by that is, take a look at what your brand is, identify who your major competitors are in that field. What are they doing? What can you look and see that they're doing in marketing? What do you like and not like? What do you think is working and not working for them? I think a lot of times when people are breaking into the marketplace, they are trying to reinvent the wheel without doing a comprehensive competitor analysis, which is a really big mistake because you're missing on lessons that other people have already learned you can learn from them directly. So I'm not saying that you want to walk in and strip someone's entire strategy that they've created, but there's lessons to be learned in doing comprehensive research. So I think step one is to really understand who your competitors are and what they're doing and what added value you're putting into the marketplace that is different from your competitors. So identifying what that added value is, creating language around that, what that added value is, that is very direct and succinct. Another trap that a lot of business owners fall into is they overcomplicate their messaging. So they will be like, it'll be like reading a novel or a scientific journal with the messaging they're trying to get across. And you have to realize the average consumer, and for the United States, the average consumer reads at a 6th grade reading level. I'm not quite sure what the comparable level is for you guys, but that's like 11 years old is basically the average reading level in the United States. So as a marketer, I need to keep that in mind because if I am not marketing and like making sure that my language is directed to that type of reading level, I'm missing an entire swath of people just by nature of like being able to effectively communicate. So having a clear message and then also not skimping on making sure the imagery that you are putting out is really tailored and beautiful. And I say that because I think a lot of times a lot of entrepreneurs also just want to get stuff out there. They want to get stuff out there. They want to get it up. They want to get quick, like reach it out. But remember that we are living in a society where we literally have a smartphone in our hands and we are seeing constant imagery all the time. So what are you doing?
Span is very little.
Very, very small. And not only that, it's just forgettable. I mean, I've probably seen 100 different types of messaging or ads this morning and it's like 10:30 here. So how am I creating an image with a visual with a message that is actually standing out or at least intriguing me to want to come back later? So I think just starting out where you're getting those fundamental elements together is where then you can start to actually create an effective plan where you're targeting to a niche. You also want to make sure that just because you start in one small area doesn't mean that you can't expand when time goes on, but you have to prove that your concept is working. And the more that you're able to show proof of concept, whether that be through email open rates and seeing like that people are really responding to the message you're putting out, or advertising return ROAS, your return on ad spend. as you see that things are working, you can then spread it out and invest more money and kind of open up that network. But you want to make sure you're not wasting your funds. And I think that that is one of the biggest mistakes entrepreneurs in sport make, is they just, again, want to cast that wide net instead of doing the appropriate small tests that it takes, so that when you do cast a wider net, you're actually being effective and not just wasting income.
Those are some very, very relevant points that you brought out, and I have to thank you for that. Coming on to one very interesting aspect about Beachy Media, you've got a 2% clause that you follow in your business model. I want you to just tell us about it, and yeah, I think our viewers are going to appreciate that.
It's my favorite part of my business, to be honest, and Rachel's favorite part. So we really pride ourselves on like trying to make sure that the success that we have is being spread outwardly. A lot of times that what we do, I mean, we're marketing sports product, we're selling product. So there's a level to which that you need to recognize that you as a human being, as a business owner, have a level of responsibility to bring back into your local and global community. So 2% of every dollar that comes in from gross revenue to our business is earmarked and goes to helping nonprofits. So whether that be providing cash directly to a nonprofit to execute on their individual campaigns, or providing services to redo their branding and do PR for them, we make sure that we're doing that every year. So we try to pick every quarter, we take that money and invest it into a certain nonprofit, but that can change depending if there's a world event. For example, with COVID, we each donated a lump sum to our individual food banks in our area. But in the past, we've done everything from donating money directly to hurricane victims in the United States, creating a media strategy for an individual that was fighting brain cancer and had created a nonprofit to help people get moving within the cancer diagnosis. We've worked with a rare genetic disorder on redoing their website and trying to get attention so that they are able to bring in more funds. We've built websites for a couple different nonprofits in the Middle East and Africa, again, to help them with their fundraising efforts for their individual undertakings. And then after the election of Donald Trump, a lot of people that were coming to the United States as refugees were not what we would say feeling welcomed. And so we worked with the IRC, and we did a crowd-funded matching campaign where we matched all donations up to a certain point. And then we made welcome bags, because a lot of immigrants and refugees that are coming to the United States literally have the clothes on their back and their papers. So they don't have like basic necessities like pots and pans and anything that when they are placed in housing, they really are starting from nothing. So we made like big welcome bags with everything under the sun that you could think of for those folks. So we've done a lot of different things with that money. It's something that we just really enjoy. If that's like 2% of our business that we really enjoy, we enjoy it a lot. And it's not just like a feel good. It's something that I think that every business that is doing well and is successful should be implementing. You need to make sure that you're giving back to the community that you live in and the community abroad, so that your business, it helps your business flourish as other people flourish around you as well. It's a little self.
Definitely. That is commendable. And I hope that this message reaches to people. And I have personally been influenced by this. So I'm already thinking in my head how I could do that in my business. Because
I love that.
Yeah. So I really appreciate the wisdom that you and Rachel have had in such a young age that you both are. So
thank you so much.
Congratulate you for that. Laura, this has been a very interesting session, and it's been very fulfilling for me, because this is probably the first time that we got global, and we got chatting with. And I have fond memories of the time when you pushed me into the night run at Munich, Germany. And I knew from then
at night after not running for a while. It was awesome. That's one of my fonder memories from traveling. So you're such a good sport.
Yeah, and I got the hint that you are quite competitive in running because I thought I was a decent runner. Thank you very much, Laura. It was a pleasure speaking with you. I wish you all the best.
Thank you so much for having me, and best of luck with everything.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.